Namibia, who've had its hard time in this Rugby World Cup, get off to a dream start against Uruguay. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. It was a dream start for Namibia, but also a bit of a nightmare towards the end. So, first minute, Uruguay on attack. Move breaks down, ball goes loose. Monton, he pounces on it. He breaks. Nobody's catching him. He's over to score. Swanepoel converts 7-0 for Namibia. Then Namibia, they're coming forward again. They're retaining the ball. They're applying pressure. We then have a lovely move as they put it through the hands, and that puts Grayling in space on the left. He goes over to score. Swanepoel converts this one for 14-0, and he did that one from out wide as well. It was a really good kick. Uruguay then, they come looking to respond, maybe a little bit shell-shocked, favourites to win this game, and suddenly they find themselves 14-0 down. But now they're camped into 22. They've got two strong 5-minute scrums back-to-back where they've won penalties. They opt for a scrum again. Now maybe they're a little more solid this time, so Uruguay spread it. Echeverry puts Amaya over to score. Echeverry then misses a very straightforward conversion under pressure from charging Namibians. So 14-5 at that point. Uruguay then looking to run it out of their own half, but again it breaks down, and they got that little thing similar to Italy where maybe playing a bit too much ball in the wrong areas of the field. Namibia then retain possession. They force a penalty. Swanepoel makes a 17-5 from the tee. And I was just thinking, I actually tweeted about it, was that, or X'd about it, I guess it is now, that, Swanepoel, if Uruguay had a player like him, it would be a match made in heaven, really, because that's what they need. They need, somebody solid to go with. Like Echeverry has great distribution, but they need somebody solid from the tee and with good kicking game as well. But then Uruguay, they win a penalty and they go to the corner. They claim the line out and they maul it over. And the Namibian maul defense just kind of disintegrated as they struggled with their power. Kessler is the scorer. Echeverry does convert this one at 17-12. Namibia, once again, they get a chance to come forward. This time, Uruguay, they infringe at a line out, and it's the same penalty that, if you're an Irish fan, you know which one it is. It's the one where the guy goes up, claims the ball, comes down, and then the lifters go in behind them and they pass the ball back. And then it's basically blocking or obstruction in there. So they give that penalty away. And again, if you're an Irish fan, you've seen it in your province and you've seen it from the Irish team so many times. But then as they go forward, Uruguay, they're off their feet at a ruck. So Namibia then, they have a chance to go for the post. Swanepoel, he strokes over the penalty and it's 20 points to 12. Uruguay, they come forward. They're looking to score before half time, but again, actually just letting them down. There's so many chances where they're spreading the ball, they look good, and then they try and force the pass, and either it's a forward pass or, they just made it very difficult for the receiver to actually hold on to the ball. And, a lot of that was, just a bit more sympathy on the passes, and maybe they would have got the score before halftime. But halftime score is 20-12, and at this stage, Uruguay, they've been trying to cause an upset against Italy, and now they're the ones potentially going to get upset here. Into the second half, then we have a good up and under from Swanepoel. Uruguay, they kind of knock it backwards and then they claim it, but then they get driven backwards and then they go off their feet to seal it, and they can see the penalty. Swanepoel makes it 23-12, and feeling like Uruguay, they need to produce a response soon, or this is really going to get away from them. Then Uruguay win yet another scrum penalty, and They go to the corner. They're camped on the Namibia line. They win a penalty for offside. They opt for the scrum in the shadow of the post. Kutsia then gets a yellow card for conceding too many penalties at the scrum, and it was basically like going for the early engage, because they were afraid of that Uruguayan power coming through. Uruguay with a great chance against 14 men for the next 10 minutes. Up for another scrum, then they spread it out to the right. Amaya then, he fends one of the Namibians who kind of shot out to try and close him down. He has an option outside as well. I think maybe it was Besso, I'm not too sure, but goes himself, basically goes around, like fends, goes around into the corner and then kind of dives and finishes in the corner. Really fantastic finish from him. Echeverry then curls in his sideline conversion for 23-19, and I'm not sure he absolutely meant to curl it in, but it got over and they all count if they go over. Mouton then, he breaks on the right wing for Namibia, finds Isaacs coming on a switch. He then makes great ground as well, offloads the ball, but then Stevens can't hold it. It was a really great move, like one of the best moves that Namibia put together in this match and the whole tournament as well. But the ball just didn't go to hand, and if it had, it was a possible try for them. Right after that, Uruguay strike. You have a number of offloads in the build-up. The likes of Ardoa heavily involved. They're a little bit lucky with some of the offloads that they actually went to hand. There was one that looked like where, it wasn't really an offload. I think a Namibian kind of stripped the ball out and it just went as if it was offload to a Uruguayan player, but they kept going on from there. And then Arata, he gets on the ball. He's still got a few covering players to beat, but he puts in a couple of steps back to back and just bamboozles them. Goes over to score. Echeverry makes it 26-23, and Uruguay hit the front for the first time in the game. Namibia, they're back to 15 now. They have a line out in the Uruguay 22. They retain it for around about 10 phases, 9 or 10 phases. They're making some progress, but then they go off feet at the ruck, and it's a penalty to Uruguay. We then have a TMO check for a high hit from Uanivi. He gets a yellow card. It's going to the bunker for review. It's shoulder to head. For me, again, I'm still not sure what's going on, but for me, it looked like a red. A minute later, then we have another high tackle from Namibia. This one is from Setia on Basso. It's upright, it's head contact, it's a yellow, goes to the bunker, and I'm thinking, have Namibia just conceded potentially 2 red cards within a minute of each other? But shortly after, we hear that the first one for Uanivi will stay as a yellow because there was mitigation. I think there was maybe a change in height from the ball carrier just before contact, and maybe that was enough to save him there. Uruguay, then they tie in the Namibian defence with a scrum, and then they go out to their backs. We have a lovely cross kick that puts Basso over to score in the corner. Berchese converts for 33-23. Then we hear Seti's yellow card is upgraded to a red, so Namibia will end the game with 14. Swanepoel, though, he splits the posts with a penalty to bring Namibia back within a converted try at 33-26. So good resolve there from Namibia, and really good, basically being to stick in the game really, and Swanepoel's kicking really helped them with that. Deus then, he emerges through a ruck with the ball and looks like he's away and he's going to score, but then Stevens snags his shirt and just about stops him. Deus then knocks it on as he goes to ground. Uruguay, they'll win a penalty at the scrum. They decide to kick for the post to give themselves a little bit of a cushion. Berchese, he makes it 36-26, and that should be the game at that stage because we've very little time left. We then have another head-on-head tackle, this time from De Santos. He comes off the worst of it. He basically got, hitting the chin from the head of the Namibian who was carrying into him, and he looked a little bit stunned, and he may not pass return to play protocols, because he probably, I'd imagine he failed a HIA. I don't know, but I imagine he did. But I'm feeling like this one again, it should be a red, because like he was completely upright in the tackle. Like the Namibian almost drove up, like he did actually drive up into under his chin, but I'm still thinking that's a red card from what we've seen previous to the World Cup. But then the Namibia captain Uanivi, who's back on the field, he gets a telling off from the referee Matthew Reynal for his remonstrations. I think Reynal was a bit frustrated with him because he had to speak to him about the way he spoke to him earlier in the game as well. And he said something along the lines of, you need to control yourself, or you can go and sit in the stands. It was something along those lines anyway. And yeah, I think he was right. Unabe's probably frustrated about the fact that he got a yellow card, and then they got another yellow card upgraded to red, and then he's thinking, well, what about this tackle? But he just should have left the officials, do what they were going to do. So then we hear that DeSantis yellow is not upgraded because there's mitigation, and a little bit confused by that, but maybe he was a little bit passive in the tackle, so that's possibly a factor. And then there was again a change in height from the ball carrier, but he went from a lower head, like he kind of ducked into the tackle and then came up with his head. So I honestly don't know. Maybe that's what it was. But from here then, Uruguay, they win a penalty. Ardo is taken it off the ball. They tap the ball. They get it off the field, because that is then the end of the game. Full time 36-26. So Namibia almost got their very first win in a Rugby World Cup game. Without doubt, easily their best performance of this Rugby World Cup there. So save the best for last at least. But they did well keeping that scoreboard ticking over, but the scrum let them down and discipline let them down as well. Uruguay, they were very lucky to be able to come back, really, because Namibia, I think if they'd been able to score there where Stevens had that ball, if he went in under the sticks and scored, I think that would have been very difficult for them to come back, because you could see that from there probably with Swanepoel they would tag on a few more 3-pointers and maybe just have a little bit too much of a margin. So the game really rested on that quick turnaround there. Namibia blow a chance, and then Uruguay score almost straight after that. But as well, Uruguay played a little bit too much in the wrong areas of the field as well, and against better teams they got punished. Namibia, they punished them. They still punished them at least once in this game that I can remember. Like the Mouton try was definitely came from that. And then getting into position as well, I think for the second try was kind of a similar situation too. But congratulations to Uruguay. Like they've been fantastic, I think, in this tournament. And they're showing now, I think, that like Uruguay used to be a good team at World Cups. They used to be up there with Argentina, kind of that level, and now hopefully they're coming back up to something similar to that level. And again, it shows us just how many decent teams there are, that if we could just find the will to actually support them and not have this whole kind of Gollum almost thing of my precious with the Six Nations and the Rugby Championship, and trying to keep teams out of it rather than trying to expand them and bring teams in. But this was probably a game that a lot of people would see and think, well, the time that it's on for Europeans isn't ideal with a lot of people. I just about got back from work to be able to watch it, but still, I think it's a gem in the rough, really, and definitely worth at least checking out highlights if you don't watch the entire game.